Hello, my name is Father Gregory Pine, and I'm a Dominican friar of the province of St. Joseph, and this is Pints of Aquinas. I don't know exactly why it is, but anytime I start a video, I'm like surprised by the fact that the video is rolling, even though I'm the one that pushed record, which is fascinating. My sister once received a phone call from a friend who immediately, upon her answering the phone, responded, "Hold on one second, I'm eating a hot dog." It's like, hey, Chief, you're the one that called me, okay? So I say to myself, hey, Chief, you're the one that pushed record. Why am I saying this? Not entirely clear. But this video is going to be about self-defense, how we can justify it, and how those principles help us to think more, more good, better about our Christian lives. All right, so the question which inspires this particular video is from one Francis Horst, who says, "I'm a bit confused on the teaching of self-defense and St. Paul's teaching specifically in Romans 13, or maybe just the idea of, Christianity's stance on self-defense in general." So I thought that we could go at it from what St. Thomas Aquinas says, insofar as that is an excellent kind of summary and distillation of scriptural teaching and patristic teaching, the church's tradition and magisterium in general. So first thing is this. To be a Christian doesn't mean that you're a doormat, or it doesn't mean that you're just sentenced to a life of being victimized by other people who are less scrupulous morally. I was thinking about this recently when it comes to lying. So we had that debate with myself and Janet Smith, and it sounds, if you don't permit the Christian to lie, like he has fewer resources, but no, I don't think that's the case, because even in uprightness of heart and even without making use of a lie, one as a Christian has everything that he needs in order to be holy and in order to testify to the truth which he himself has received. All right, so don't go thinking like, oh, I'm a Christian, so like half of the possibilities are ruled out for me because half of the possibilities are sinful. Bummer, my life is bound to be boring, uninventive, kind of silly, stupid, dumb, whatever you say. Okay, no. All the good things, all the things which bear fruit, all the things which give life, those all remain open to you. And when it comes to this particular theme of self-defense, just because you are Christian doesn't mean that you're just gonna get victimized or you're just gonna get run roughshod over, if that's a proper adverbial. Never mind. Right, so yes, so you have what you need in order to flourish. And then talking maybe in terms of where people will encounter this teaching, I think it often comes up in conversations about just war. People are sometimes surprised that there is a Christian justification for going to war. Now, granted, to prosecute a just war means that you have to be attentive to more things than world leaders are often attentive to. But, it's like kind of basic stuff. It's got to be a just cause, right? So you have to have a proper object of the moral act. You have to do it with upright intention, okay? So it can't be like a little land snatch and grab. You can't just do it for monetary gain. You see where this is going. And so, too, you need to have like the right circumstances in which to go about it. So war is one of many permissible moral acts. Granted, it's more complicated. Okay, so then let's talk specifically about self-defense, all right? When we come to this question, it gets most heated, the conversation gets most heated, or the considerations become most urgent when we talk about it in terms of using lethal force. So am I permitted to defend my life by killing another human being? And I think at first this produces a kind of revulsion in us. An instantaneous reaction is like, dude, no, I don't want to become a murderer because that's against the law, right? It's against the civil law, but it's also against God's law. It's against the fifth commandment, which says, thou shalt not kill. Now here, I think that we can make a helpful clarification that commandment is about murder, okay? So thou shalt not murder. But it's already foreseen in the Hebrew code, in the Old Testament, in the Decalogue, that people would kill for legitimate reasons. Okay, so if you were to transgress any of the 10 commandments, you would be sentenced to death. Now, somebody's going to have to execute you, and that person is going to be a member of the community to which you pertain. So presumably, you're not. So say that you. Okay, Father Gregory, what are you trying to say? If there weren't permissible forms of killing, then if one person committed this offense, then you would have to either devise ways in which to kill that person, like force them to commit suicide, or there would just be an endless series of deaths, all of which would be culpable. Okay, so that's crazy town. So there are legitimate reasons for which one might take the life of another if that other has transgressed to the point where he or she forfeits the life. Okay. Now, what are situations in which that might be true? Well, we already mentioned one, which would be, to kill combatants in a just war. But the other big one is capital punishment. And that's like, okay, so think about yourself as if you were, I don't know, the mayor of a town or the magistrate of a town or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. And what you want for the citizenry is the common good, right? You all want them to enjoy tranquility of order and growth and virtue, and you want them to partake of that common good in an abundant way. But let's say that somebody gravely endangers that common good because they keep sneaking into other people's homes and killing the inhabitants. All right, once you find out who this person is and you make it determined that you have no jail cell in which to house them, which can defend you as a people, as a populace, against the threat of further murders, it is a legitimate, right? It is a defensible move to put that person to death. This is just the basis of the church's teaching about capital punishment, that it's a way in which the community, the society, defends itself against somebody who endangers its common good. Now, so clarifications about that from Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis most recently, suggest that the reasons why one might practice capital punishment seem to be fewer and fewer or less and less pressing in the 21st century because we have means to imprison somebody for a long time, or because we have means to defend the common good against an unjust aggressor, yada, yada, thus and such. You get it. Okay, so that being said, we have examples in our experience where it is permissible to kill another human being. Now, we're going to precise the sense. To use precise as a verb is a kind of silly thing, but we're going to make our understanding of this a little more precise by getting some more principles involved, by fleshing out the logic. All right, how am I doing? Doing great. All right. So then what's the basis of this whole teaching on self-defense? The basis is basically that there is an order to love. All right, so you as a human being are limited, and you can only love so well and so widely. And the principle according to which you determine how widely you love is union, all right? So we are responsible for loving more those things which are united to us or with which we have a certain communion. Because similitude, likeness, is a cause of love, all right? So is goodness, so is knowledge, but similitude is a cause of love. We're responsible for loving those things which are like us. That probably demands another video to explain why that's the case. It is the case. Check it out. Prima Secundae, questions 26 to 28. All right. So that means that in our own lives, we're most responsible for loving God, who is more interior to ourselves than we are to ourselves. After that, we're most responsible for loving ourselves. And you're like, wait a second, I thought it was God, other self. Nay, nay. You're supposed to love others as you love yourself. The love of yourself is the actual standard or the norm according to which you love others, because the standard is union, all right? So God is most intimate to our hearts, and then we are next most so. So we're responsible for loving, for defending our own life, because we have the closest union, the closest communion with ourselves. And then after that, there are others. And then in that category of others, it's like family first, right? And friends, and then people whom you know less well, and then people on the other side of the world, all right? So we're responsible for loving those who are closest to us. This just is part of the outworking of the fact that we're limited, that we're embodied, etc. And then when it comes to affirming, immaterial over material goods or spiritual goods over corporal goods, we're responsible for loving our souls first and then our bodies, right? But if you kind of work that out in a more articulated fashion, we're responsible for loving our souls, the souls of others, our bodies, the bodies of others, all right? So you are permitted, or you are encouraged, you are to love your own body more than the body of other human beings, especially those other human beings who threaten it. So then, when you get to the question of self-defense, which comes up in the Secunda Secundae, question 64, article 7, I think that's correct, all right? You have an instance in which you are responsible for defending the integrity of your own body before, and to the exclusion of, the responsibility that you bear towards the integrity of that other person's body. Father Gregory, that was just about the most complicated way you could say that thing. Could you say it in another way? Gladly. You can defend your life even if it means hurting another person or even killing another person, because you're more responsible for this than you are for that. All right. So with this act, there's a recognition that there are two effects. All right. The first is the defense of your life, which is what you intend primarily and per se. The other effect, which might come about as a result of the self-defense that you exercise, is the wounding or the killing of that other human being. This this effect is foreseen, but it's not principally or primarily intended. And that's the basis of the logic whereby you can say that you are defending yourself by exercising lethal force, but you're not actually intending to kill. Is this just some kind of logic chopping nonsense whereby we justify killing other people? Let's talk about it more, and I hope to prove that that is not the case. All right. So this hinges also on exercising proportionate force. So if somebody, like say a 5-year-old's coming at you with a plastic hammer and they're like, I'm gonna hammer your kneecaps, you're like, okay. And then you bring out like an AR type assault rifle and then mow that child down. Sorry, this is a brutal example. I should have given a trigger warning. That is a metonym, never mind. Right, that would be disproportionate show of force. That'd be crazy town, because you don't really need to defend yourself from this kid. And if you do need to defend yourself from this kid, all you need to do is take a giant step backwards, all right? Or just extend your hand and place it on the forehead of said child, and then he will not be able to access your kneecaps. So, but let's say that somebody is coming at you, foaming at the mouth with an AR type assault rifle, and they have made a solemn promise not to stop pursuing you until such time as they see you put into the grave, because because they're nuts, or because they're just a crazy serial killer type person, or for whatever reason, all right? They've just got a fixation on the type of, or the shade of red that you wear, and, like the highlight trim on your pants, whatever it is, okay? You can defend yourself from that other individual by using proportionate force. So you want to use as little force as is possible to cease the threat. But that person's coming at you with a full head of steam, with the means whereby to extinguish your life. You can shoot to stop, and stop in a permanent way. All right, so that's the basic outline. Maybe a final, or maybe two final clarificatory questions are, people are just very uncomfortable with this, and then the question would be like, do I have to do this? And the answer is no, all right? So St. Thomas himself says in the question dedicated to war, so that'd be Secunda Secunda question 40 in the treatise on charity, he asks, for instance, whether priests should participate in war, and he says no, because of the imagery of their vocation. Like a priest goes up to the altar so as to signify our Lord Jesus Christ, who mounted the cross in order to die for us, right? To shed his blood for love of us. So it's more fitting that a priest die than that a priest kill. Way more fitting. And actually this is enshrined in canon law, or certainly it was enshrined in the decretals of St. Thomas's time. But you have authors in the 20th and 21st century who say there's a kind of logic to our baptism which associates us with the priesthood of our Lord Jesus Christ, which might give us pause at the very least. I'm not arguing for Christian pacifism here, but it might give us pause before we go forward into a killing act with a full head of steam. So I think that, you're not required to kill. You can give up your life. But there is a recognition that you might have some serious responsibilities. You might not want to die. I think everyone basically doesn't want to die. Right, so in that event, you need to know that you have justification, that you have grounds in which to defend yourself wholly and entirely, but you need not, right? You may choose not to. And since most of us are not going to be threatened with impending death in just these terms, what's the point of knowing this? Well, because it's delightful to know, and because speculative enterprises are often the most practical of considerations, because they make us more engaged and delightful human beings. And you're going to need something to talk about at your upcoming parties, whatever season you are presently celebrating, okay? But also, I think it's helpful for you to know that you can stand up for yourself, okay? And that you are equipped, right? You are encouraged to stand up for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you're constantly seeking, to vindicate your small rights in a kind of a tit-for-tat way. No, but it does mean, for instance, like if somebody undermines your reputation without just cause, you are within bounds. You are encouraged to see to it that that does not happen, that that's not perpetuated. It'd be an entirely just and Christian consideration to go up to that person and say, I hear that you're besmirching my name. My name is one of my most prized possessions. I have the right to defend it. You ought to stop it. And if not, then I will bring the full force of whatever means I have at my disposal to see to it that that doesn't happen. I think about this especially with priests, because, we're in a strange time in the life of the church, sad time in the life of the church in many respects. But the thought of false accusation, I think, is a thing about which many priests think. And how does a priest defend his name were he to be falsely accused? Well, he has the right to, right, and has the means to, and he should exercise those means to the best of his ability, I think, given the logic of what we just described. But then, and here to kind of end on a more sublime point, it's for us then to also to defend the faith. St. Thomas says that we need to be prepared in spirit to defend the faith when it's required of us. And that requires courage. And, using a similar logic, right? It's a different situation, as a result of which it requires adjustment, but you should exercise proportionate force. So somebody's shouting you down, right? I think it's good, obviously, to be civil and to testify to the integrity of your faith by a sterling character. But you can use force, as it were, not like to beat them over the head with your doctrine, but you can stand in the conviction that what you have is true, that it's worth defending, that it can be defended, and that you should give full-throated assent to what it is that you believe. So again, to be Christian doesn't mean you just take it, right? To be Christian doesn't mean that you're just a doormat or a victim. To be Christian means that you are made to know the truth and to love the good and to testify to others as to the possibility of that in their lives. And that will sometimes demand of you a just response to an unjust attack. But fear not, for our Lord Jesus Christ has already overcome the world. Boom. That, my friends, is what I wanted to say. This is Pints with Aquinas. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel, push the bell, get emails, and then just go wild when you open them every time. And then if you haven't yet, please do check out Godsplaining, which is a podcast to which I contribute with 4 other Dominican friars. 30-minute episodes on Thursdays, all kinds of wild things. I'd list them, but this video is too long. And please do check that out on a podcast app or on YouTube and subscribe and get and love. All right, my prayers are for you. Please pray for me. I'll catch you next time on Pints with Aquinas.